This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
So welcome everybody. It's not raining outside yet, is it? And is it still above freezing? Thank you, thank you, thank you, whomever, thank you. But welcome, and so glad that you are all here, whether you're here in person or watching us on television or YouTube. Thank you for everybody for coming and spending your time this evening with us. My name is Janet Kane. I am the co-chair with Andrew LaFosse of the, it's a very long, Ad Hoc Senior Center Building Feasibility Committee. We take the prize for the longest committee title. And this committee is just an amazing group of individuals that are both knowledgeable and dedicated, and I'm so honored to have been working with this committee. And we've been meeting like twice a week since April. So, every other week since April. So it seems like twice a week sometimes. Anyway, why are we here today? Just as a quick refresher, back in July of 2021, Joan Linehan, our director, hi Joan, okay, received notification that that the Southampton Council on Aging was named as a beneficiary of the estate of David Red Parsons. Approximately 7 months later, after the assets from the estate were liquidated, we learned that that amount of money was $2.5 million. But there was a catch, and that's why we're doing this study now, and that's why we're all here this evening. The town must complete a feasibility study for a standalone senior center within 2 years of Mr. Parsons' death. And that 2-year anniversary is May 17th. So this is part of our study. The select board appointed this committee in April of 22, and fast forward to September, we hired Abacus architect and planners to complete, working with us, this feasibility study by the end of March. One of our main goals is to be transparent to the community, and that's why we're hosting you this evening, and thank you again, and I'm so glad the snow took a night off so that we could all get out here. Our research, though, shows that our current senior center doesn't come close to fulfilling the needs of our current senior population, and especially in addition to that, the growing future population. We haven't completely finished the study. We're not 100% finished. So we don't have all the answers tonight, but I think you'll gain a lot of insight for the process. And I'll just ask you if you wouldn't mind holding your questions and comments to the end of the presentation, and we'll have ample time to really address any of those at that point in time. So let me quickly introduce the members of the committee that are able to join us tonight, and the architects from Abacus as well. And then Abacus will walk us through the process that we have taken all together to reach this point this evening. So I already introduced Andrew and Joan. In addition to that is Maureen or Renee Groden, Ron Lauren, who is not able to make it tonight, as well as Libby Baldwin and Audrey Pierce. I knew I'd forget to click that. Darcy Gasparini and Ed Gibson. And from Abacus, I've become very fond of our co-partners, David Eisen and Devlin Kenny. So at this time, I will turn it over to David.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have one comment on what Janet just said. She said it was a catch that to get that money had to do this study. And I guess the way we see it, it's a terrific opportunity. And for us, it's a terrific opportunity to work with a great committee, it's a great opportunity to meet with you. We had a previous meeting. We've worked with a lot of people in town. A great opportunity, common cause, work towards a common goal, which is a much better senior center. And you don't really do that without having this kind of a study. So what a great group of people. So, and I apologize, sometimes the computer's close enough, and I'm not going to read all of this, I can kind of see what's there and here, so I'm going to go sort of back and forth between seeing where we're at, and I really want to talk to you, and let me just say, the front row is completely empty.
For the recording.
Turn the mic.
Okay, this is, okay, thank you. If anyone wants to move further forward, it's a great thing to do. The way we see it, we're all in this together, so, or you can stay right where you're at. So what does your community look like? You can see the blue line, which is population growth, and you can see the orange line, which is the growth in the number or percentage of people over 60 years old. This is a trend throughout the country. It's certainly a trend here. A larger and larger percentage of Southampton residents are 60 and above. The town's getting larger. The senior population is getting larger. But when we do plans for a senior facility, we're looking 50 years into the future. So there is that growth. There are two other kinds of growth we're anticipating. One is, if you build it, they will come. So what happens, you build a new senior center. This is true of community centers. This is true of churches. Is you build a facility that's twice as big and 3 times as many people come. And that's a great thing. But you have to look forward to the number of people you anticipate coming when you come up with the program and the size of the building. Another thing we're hearing and seeing is that you know, often the people who come to senior centers are on the older end of that demographic. When you build a new senior center that's bright and open and filled with light, suddenly people who are in their 50s or early 60s say, oh my gosh, I would have never gone to the old senior center. If this is the new senior center, count me in. So that's the kind of future that we're planning for. So what do senior centers do? And we've there's a lot of writing here, so we popped out the key concepts in orange. They make connections to the broader community. Senior centers do the same thing schools do, churches, synagogues, bridge clubs, you know, the Elks Club. People feel a need to connect with each other. And as people get older, their friends move away, their kids move away, and it becomes harder and harder to connect. And senior preventers provide an opportunity for people to connect with each other. Help seniors stay independent. You get the social support, you can get advice, you can get counseling, you can build the confidence that you need to stay healthy and stay independent. Emergency response is another issue. You don't have air conditioning in your house and it's incredibly hot. The electricity goes out and you don't have heat in your house. A senior center is a place to go in emergency conditions. Healthy meals. It may be harder as you get older to get to a grocery store. It may be harder to cook. Many senior centers serve 30, 40, 50 people for lunch, but it's also a chance to connect and to socialize. Can't do that at the current senior center because of septic conditions. Provide recreational, artistic, and just social and emotional activities that keep people young as they get old. And counseling. Doing your taxes. Your husband died, your wife died, they did the taxes. You need support, you need help. And there are all kinds of help you can get at the senior center. So these are kinds of pictures of the kinds of places that, working with this community, you seem to be needed. Social spaces and daily dining spaces, places that are flexible. They can be dancing at 10 o'clock and at 12 o'clock it's yoga, arts and crafts, game room, gardens and outdoor spaces, wellness rooms, a place for private conversations about the intimate challenges that people face as they get older. Outdoor gathering spaces, flexible event spaces where you can have a big banquet, open kitchens. What we're hearing more and more is young people want to hear from older people about how to cook, and old people want to pass on their, everything they've learned over 30 or 40, 50 years to younger people. It's just another way to connect, not within a generation, but between generations. Active sports, cardio and weights. These are really important things. And you need a place to do them. And the current facility at 2,000 square feet is just too small to do all the kinds of things that we've heard from you that you want to do. Multiple activities can't happen in that single room. Sound control. If somebody's playing cards over here, it's really hard to do meditation 20 feet away. The bathrooms don't even begin to meet contemporary needs and aren't compliant with building codes. Storage, there are a couple of little closets. It's so hard to put things away so you can use a space for something else and then pull them out the next day. The septic system just isn't working for the senior center. There's a toilet that flushes but cannot cook meals there because the current septic system doesn't meet those kinds of needs. Privacy, private conversations, there's no place to do it. Offices are a significant problem because they're not visible as you walk in to greet people. They're in an awkward location, so this isn't just the size, this is the way the current facility is laid out. Outdoor activities, there's just no space. It's surrounded by a parking lot. Parking is limited, even though it takes up so much of the current site. And just poor accessibility. The current facility is up a steep hill. It's off a major road. So the question is, how do we solve those problems? And luckily, there's that bequest to get things moving. So we started out by looking for places to build a new senior center. And the idea was it was close to the center of town, it was easily accessible, and you can see we've sort of highlighted the major sites we looked at. And many of them are on Route 10 because that makes it easier to access them, although traffic can be a problem. Looked at publicly owned spaces, looked at privately owned spaces, so we could figure out what was the best for a new senior center. And buildings are designed in two ways. They're designed from the outside in and the inside out. So we started from the outside in. What kind of, how could the sites we were looking at support the construction of a new facility? So we looked at 16 East Street. It's big enough at 5.5 acres, but there wasn't appropriate access. And there are all kinds of conditions that really made it pretty much impossible to build a senior center and have people, have access to it. There are wetland issues. So that got crossed off the list pretty early. 8 East Street, which is the former police station site, a wonderful old building, 1.14 acres. It just doesn't work. You really need at minimum 2.5 acres for a senior center if you're going to have any outdoor space, if you're going to have a new building, if there's going to be parking, if there's going to be room for expansion. So that, as much as there is a desire to reutilize the existing building, and it's publicly owned, just doesn't work for a contemporary center. 17 College Highway, that's where the Harley-Davidson was. Hey, why not use an existing building? It was just way too big and wasn't proportioned to work effectively. There's a pretty high price tag on the property. So those got crossed off pretty early. 0 College Highway. 41 acres, don't need nearly 41 acres. Work with the owner. There are a number of different places where you could locate a senior center, so real opportunities there. 89 Clark and 79 Clark, right next to each other. They're near the center of town. They're big enough. Septic should work there. There's some slope, but we can work with it. Seem like great opportunities. And 210 College Highway, which is where the current senior center is, and the town hall. You know, really interesting idea that you have a campus of town hall, senior center, they're right in the same locations. So these seem like good places to look at. That's the outside in. The inside out, what would this new senior center consist of? So we had a meeting it was open to the public, but primarily those who use the current senior center, a series of different activities, asking a whole series of questions. You can see on the top, we asked a bunch of questions on Post-it notes. Some people are uncomfortable speaking in public, but we don't want long essays on a Post-it note. You can say just enough, and got all kinds of interesting answers to interesting questions, which we compiled at the meeting and read them back to people, our conclusions, and then a lot of kind of open mic where we threw out questions, could get answers, took a whole series of notes, learned a tremendous amount by reaching out to the people who know their community the best. Then we did an online survey, which was open to everybody, so we could get other points of view. So, and I know some of this stuff, especially if you're sitting in the back, you can't read. That's okay. I mean, I'm going to sort of summarize the big conclusions. Do you feel the current senior center is sufficient to meet the needs of the Southampton seniors? 41 people said yes. 255 people said no. So don't take our word for it that it is inadequate. So I know you can't read this, but we listed a whole series of different kinds of activities and asked people to rate them. And really the point is there's none that are this many people want and none that this many people want. Everybody wants everything. All those kinds of activities I list got big thumbs up. So we need a lot of flexibility. We need spaces that can serve different purposes because we are not going to have that many different function spaces that only do one thing once a week in the senior center. When are people going to use it? That's the question on the left. Well, mostly weekdays, mostly in the morning, mostly in the afternoon, and mostly on weekends. So essentially, people are always going to be wanting to use this. And can we focus this any better? I'm just noticing it's blurred. Maybe it's as focused. I'm right up here, and it looks a little out of focus. And if the town were able to identify sufficient resources through some combination of public funding, private fundraising, user fees, would you support moving forward? That's very likely is green. Below that is likely, and then it kind of disappears. A big thumbs up from the online community about moving forward. So we put together a program. We turned all of those dreams, those needs, and those desires into a series of different spaces with approximate square footages to accommodate all of the activities, including offices, including bathrooms, including social space. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but we kind of came to the conclusion about 12,000 square feet is what you need to accommodate needs today and into the foreseeable future. So what does that look like? That was a bunch of numbers. What we're really talking about are spaces. So here are a series, and you can see the idea here, this is a conceptual plan. It's not on a particular site. There are a series of different spaces accommodating a series of different needs. This is exercise equipment. This is arts and crafts. We got a pool table. We got a ping pong table. These are the offices. This is reception. This is the great room with the kitchen. So, and a door that can open and close, so you could have a big banquet and use the whole thing, but during the week, most days, this would be closed, and you could have lunch served from the kitchen for people who really need and want to come here for lunch. Whether it's Meals on Wheels, there are different ways to accommodate that need. So, what is all of this? So, what we hear over and over and over is that people come for the yoga, but they stay to hang out with their friends. And they can't really stay in the yoga room because the dance class people push them out. So you need places to just hang out and be. And that is really important. And you could call this the town common approach to planning. It's not a 10-foot corridor lined by boxes. It is a wonderful shared space lined by opportunities for activities where you can look out onto a terrace, you could look back to the entry, you could look out this way. There are a lot of different activities that could happen at the same time that aren't necessarily planned but are really, really needed. And I think there's a sense of buy-in and just a little, I'm on the Mass School Building Authority Designers Selection Panel. So in my free time, I, along with the panel, pick architects to do schools. So I've seen in the past couple of years 100 school plans. Not a single one of them is a 10-foot corridor lined by classrooms where you and I both went to school, because that doesn't work. The really valuable lessons aren't learned in the classrooms, they're learned in the hallways. And if you think way back to when you were teenagers, and maybe some of you are teenagers, but the same is true at any age. You really learn from hanging out with your friends. So this is designed to accommodate that. So that's a design in a conceptual sense. We then looked at those sites and said, how can we fit those plans on these sites? Can we do it? So here's 79 Clark, here's 89 Clark. 79 is pretty narrow, so you have very limited visibility onto the street, and the building and the parking stretch back. 89 Clark, wow, you could really connect to the street, really have a presence. It's not like it's that busy a street, but it seemed like a nice thing to do. Here's the social space, here's the social space, terraces, parking, walking trails, all kinds of activities. This is very conceptual, but a test fit. Do these sites work to accommodate the building programs? And in both 79, 89 seem to make sense. So Zero College, there are a lot of different sites. You could say, perhaps it's best to be on Zero College, which is here. On Route 10, because you have a lot of visibility, there's traffic going by, but it's commercial frontage. There's very little commercial zone space. So we said, can we take a little lot and fit a community center in it right along Route 10? Well, if you squeeze it too much, you just don't have enough elbow room. Here's another part of Zero College. There's more room to breathe. And then you could move back away from the street. So these are the kinds of questions we're continuing to ask. If it was Zero College, which seems like a good opportunity, where would you actually build? And, the reason you're here is because we want to hear from you on what you think of some of these opportunities. And here's 210 College Highway. What a great place to put a senior center, except it would have to be 2 floors. And what's not shown here is there are wetlands here, and what's not shown is it's a steep slope. Oh, and by the way, there's a fire station there. And a new senior center that couldn't go there until a new public safety facility is built, and we don't know when that's going to be. So it's not an empty piece of land just waiting for the senior center. So all of these pros and cons need to be weighed. So how do you make a decision? Versus, lots of visibility, which is probably good, a small site, close to other facilities, but needs to be 2 stories and need to wait for the fire station. So this is what we call a decision-making matrix. We have a whole series of different criteria here, and we evaluate the different opportunities with, red, yellow, green, thumbs down, so-so, thumbs up. So You know, it's subjective in many ways, but it's not the roll of the dice in zeroing in on what works when you only have like 20 or 25 ways of evaluating each site. So, and then here are the 3 sites, big X, those just don't seem to work. Although we may fill in the matrix just to make it clear why you know, they didn't seem to work. And so that's where we're at. You know, we've done a lot of work, but this is not done. The decisions haven't been made. They do need to be made May 17th, and we're trying to finish up our report later in March. Not quite finish it up. It's a working document, so we can refine all of this. So next steps, and this is the last slide, and I then want to turn it over to you. We want to complete the evaluations of sites and programs, complete evaluation of pros and cons, recommend sites and buildings. We really want to set a clear direction. And when we say we, I'm talking about we, I'm talking about we, I'm talking about we. Cost analysis, you know, probably the costs are similar in any of these sites, but if there's a basis for making a decision, and obviously if the town has to pay for this site, you know, the cost could factor into it, and pursue funding. That $2.5 million will come in really, really handy. It will not pay for a new senior center, capital campaign, pursue grants, state, federal, there may be different kinds of grants that are available from ARPA funding from the feds, see what can trickle down, and then town funding for whatever can't be funded otherwise. The idea would keep it to a minimum, but you know, there's going to be a lot of reaching out to any source that could provide the funding. And that's where we're at right now. So I think at this point, we would like to hear from you. There are questions I can answer or may not be able to answer. I'm going to turn it over to Janet and others if there are questions that are more procedural than they are architectural and planning questions. There's a microphone over there, and I think the ask is that you talk into the microphone so that the folks at home can hear you. So who's got questions? And we want a line at least 10 people long behind that microphone.
Someone has to start us out, though, right, Tammy?
Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway.
I don't know if that's on, Tammy. It's on, but I don't know if it's loud. We got the tech guy coming. It's on, but it's...
Let's hear it, Tammy.
Testing. It's on?
Yeah. It just wasn't loud.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway, Southampton. I have a number of questions that were brought up to me to ask at this because people didn't want to come. Right now, the seniors, I love the senior center. I think this is really cool, what's going on. Right now, the senior center is attached to the town hall, who does take care of the custodian work and the plowing and sanding, the electrical, the heating, and with this new building and the size that it's being made, has a feasibility study or a budget to see what the cost of the heating and electrical and groundkeeping and custodians is going to be. Has a septic been worked out to use that kitchen to do the meals? Because your parking lot cannot be on top of it. And how is this going to affect our town budget? We have so many issues that we cannot afford this and we can't afford that. I want to make sure that has been addressed and is feasible. And then who is maintaining these walk trails and the grounds around it if it's not attached to the town hall?
Thanks, Tammy. As always, you have always good questions. And as I said, the study's not complete. And this, to be very clear, this is the feasibility study to obtain the first step to have the $2.5 million. So there are a lot of questions and process to go through. So when we've talked to a capital campaign organization or fundraising organization that we may consider working with, and one of their suggestions was always make sure you raise enough money as well to sort of carry the load of the building for the first few years. I mean, that's something we'll look at, but certainly those are all realistic questions, and probably in the next phase, we'll get more into the specific septics and the cost of maintenance and everything else that goes with that, like any other town building. So unfortunately, those are some of the questions we won't have in this study. This allows us to get the money so that we can pursue some of those answers. Does anybody else want to add to that? Anybody?
And having gone through similar processes many times, it is a long process. The completion of this, if only suddenly it would get built. But, there will be many, many opportunities. I thought that was a really good question. It's not as if it hadn't been considered, but it will cost them not just for construction, it will cost for staffing, it will cost for maintenance, and the town needs to be prepared to allocate that. You folks are the ones who are going to vote up or down for that, so the case has to be made that it's worth it. Other people?
I think they need you to use that one just for home, Carl, sorry.
Carl Keener, County Road. I just have a question regarding if we're pursuing grants for this. You've said you've been through this many times before. What is your opinion as to what strings might be attached to grants if we got them? Any idea?
Grants, the whole granting system has changed since the feds dropped it had dropped trillions of dollars in at the top. And many of them are focused on the socioeconomic conditions in communities. So in order to get the grant, the community has to meet certain profiles. And none of that work, I don't think, has been done yet, looking at, what grants might be available. And, historically, they've been fairly limited, and that's changing. And I think some of this money is allocated through the state. So it takes a while for the money to flow down. So, remains to be seen whether any are available and if there are strings attached. And I don't know what those strings necessarily would be. It would probably be you might have to prove that you serve a certain demographic. Did you have any particular concerns about that?
No, only that it's been my experience in the past that when we've gotten grants, that there were specific requirements that were thrown into them that made it more costly, or in some cases could even make it untenable.
And I know some of the grants, some of the money that's available, certainly through the federal government, and it may be through the state, you need to pay certain wage requirements. You need to meet sustainability requirements. For example, it might need to be an all-electric building, no fossil fuels. So these are the kinds of things that are being piled on top of a lot of grants. And there are things on the one hand, you can't argue with having an energy efficient building, you can't argue with paying people a decent wage, except does that raise the cost? And this would be a public project. So automatically, and this has always been true, it just because it's public, whether there's grants or not, you have to follow a whole public process that makes it significantly more expensive than if a private developer were doing it. So it's a really good question and something people need to ask themselves.
Renee Groden, Select Board, and Cheryl Lane. I just want to let you know that Richie Neal helped secure, I think it was $2 million for, was it Cummington or Chesterfield? Worthington, for their senior center. And we just got an email literally yesterday from Senator Warren. Is that what you're going to say? Okay, well, actually, no. See, why don't you come up? Because Chris Fowles is the chair of the Select Board, and she's also chair of the Grants Committee, and we have a couple of other Grants Committee people here, and they've helped to secure over $500,000 for Southampton. So I'm sure we'll be tapping into your help. But why don't you say something, Chris?
Thanks, Rainey. Chris Fowles, Gun Road. Yeah, basically, we have various opportunities for grants, both state and federal. We've taken the opportunity to do a lot of state grants so far. Some of you are familiar with the work we've been doing on the Greenway. But we have had some opportunities to look at bigger programs. The federal grants are more complicated, so there's a lot more requirements for us to even apply. But the main thing with all the grant money that's out there is to be able to look at the actual eligibility requirements and see if it makes sense for Southampton. There are certain grants that are specifically for rural towns, less than 10,000 population. That fits us. So great, that criteria is checked off, but then as you go through the list of what makes you eligible, are there other things that really just don't make any sense? And that grant opportunity may have to go by the side in favor of something else. But as Rita was just saying, we just got a request from Senator Warren's office looking for ideas for what they're calling community-directed grant ideas. And then they have a certain amount of money at the federal level where she and Senator Markey are able to put in sort of earmarks, I guess, for various communities over time. And Worthington did get about $2 million toward their senior center. I think it was just last year, as a matter of fact. So there's opportunities for us to get more linked in over time with not only our local and reps and state reps, but certainly with our federal folks that we haven't had a whole lot of connection with. Our current reps, Senator Vilas, and before that, Rep. Sabadosa, have been phenomenal in terms of helping us out with anything in Southampton, but especially grant money. And so I think we've got a chance to keep on pursuing that. So the grant monies in general, just to kind of tie into Carl's question, a lot of the grants require a 20% match. The highest I've seen so far is probably a 40% match. So usually it's around a 20-25% match that has to come either cash or in kind. And so that might be another grant that you have to apply for to be a match, or sometimes we've been very fortunate with the citizens' approval to have monies from the Community Preservation Fund, depending on the kind of grant we're applying for. So there's lots of work to be done, but the money's out there, federal and statewide. It's just a matter of having a good plan and all the facts that we need to try and put an argument forward. They're very competitive, but hey, you don't get anywhere if you don't try. Right.
Thank you. That was a way better answer than I came up with. So here is my question. Can we bottle that up? Can we get a summary of that? And because this is a whole range of expertise way, beyond what we do. I mean, our number one job is to spend that money, not to get it. And so can we, maybe through you, get that summary and we'll put it in the report? Sure. Really, really helpful. Thank you.
It's being recorded.
Yeah.
Folks. Yep.
And yes.
So I'm Mara Lamb. I live on Pomeroy Meadow Road. And my thought about which location we choose, I think we have to put more thought into, how much would a septic system cost in one place as opposed to another place? And would we have solar panels, and would one location be more suitable for that than another? And I think that's one of the first things we'd have to come to grips with, like where to put the senior center.
We should have dueling microphones here.
Yeah.
That's a really good question about where it goes, and this is exactly the question we've been asking, and we haven't answered it. But this is the question. I mean, do you have any particular thoughts on that, on the location?
Well, that it should be in a sunny location for solar panels, for heating and
Yeah.
air conditioning, and which site would be the easiest to put a septic system in. They're not all created equal.
Yeah.
Of being, so you could put a septic system, but it'd be tons more expensive on a certain piece of land than another.
Yeah.
So to save money on those things before we expand to the others.
And we have been looking into this. So in terms of septic, we have been working with an engineering firm, and I should have mentioned that, has looked at all of the sites that are on the table. And for example, 210 College, there are a lot, where the current senior center is, there are a lot of challenges.
Yes.
0 College is the best for septic. 79 and 89 Clark are okay. So for those three, there isn't a deal breaker in terms of it just isn't going to work. 210 College is the riskier.
Right.
So we have been looking at all of those issues, and we will have the engineering report and their recommendations. So that will absolutely be taken into account.
And I would think that we could get grants if we were building a solar building. We would
Yeah, and that's,
eligible.
yeah. So that's a component too. Although the sites are fairly similar in that regard,
Okay.
and that's more, how do you implement that? Where does the money come? What's the mechanism? So probably all the sites work from that respect.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, really important issues.
Jay Smith, Pomeroy Meadow Road. I was curious whether it's already been pre-decided that we have the complete list of potential sites, or are you still looking? That's one question.
Well, at this point, there was, before we came on board, look, pretty much far and wide for options. And I think a few things have come up. We added them to the list. And you want to take this?
So we started by looking at, there were restrictions as far as how far they are from different areas of Route 10. So we went down, I think, at least a mile or more in each direction, and then we went a certain direction east-west. And we did a lot of work, and we have 2 engineers and an architect on our committee, so we went and looked at all possible sites, and the select board had requested that we prioritize town-owned sites. So we did, and that's why the town property stayed on the list for so long. And then we had a couple of people that contacted us to say, would you consider our particular site? And so we actually did a lot of work with maps and all kinds of things to look at the various sites. And so we eliminated 3 of them, and then we're left with 4. And that's kind of where it stands. And then we'll go through a process of filling in that chart and determining and making a recommendation that this is the preferred site and this is maybe the backup site. So I don't know if we're in the position to open it back up to consider other sites, but certainly if you wanted to make is that what you're asking, is if there's another place that we should consider?
Well, when I first heard about this, I would have thought that the obvious thing was to expand the 210 College Highway property in some manner.
Yeah.
So I was a little surprised to learn that that's, I don't know, at the bottom of the list or a ways down. I would have thought that to extend the town office building in a westerly direction and expand the parking up that way, or to take over the hillside behind the fire station, would have been viable, but maybe not.
Well, that property's still on, that might be an architect and engineer question, but that site is still on the list. But in order to build a senior center on that site, the determination would be that it would have to be a second-story, 2-story building. And
Well,
so
I didn't understand that, because it's a hillside, and if you dig up the dirt here and put the dirt there, then it's a one-story site. So I'm puzzled.
Yeah, well, I'll let him answer that. So the properties are across from the Labrie property, which is across from Parker and O'Grady. It's the Gilliher property on Clark, which is across the street from Conant Park, and Marmon Keystone, which is across from Conant Park also, and 210 College Highway. So those are the 4 sites that will be evaluated down to probably a preferred and a backup. So, but you want to talk about the...
In 210, that whole area, it goes up and up and up and up. And as we looked at it, at a certain point, when you get really beyond the existing parking lot, it seemed too steep, too high up, too much of a climb to be a suitable site.
Well,
yeah.
I'm puzzled because that's why God invented, digging machines, but...
Yeah. And you could do anything, I suppose, with enough money, but there was real concern that the cost would balloon, and and there are a whole series of disadvantages to that site. I mean, down below there are wetlands that constrain what you can do. The ADA requires accessibility, but it's especially important at a senior center that you make the site easier to use. So it seemed like there were enough challenges that it would be tough to push that forward. The septic, that was the worst site for septic, not impossible. So with all of these compounding problems, I think it dropped down on our list.
I guess I would be more worried if that hillside was sitting on top of a bunch of ledge or, bad rock.
It is.
Yeah.
We know that?
Yes, from the public safety complex plan several years ago. So I think it was 2015 that the Public Safety Committee had done a lot of work, and that was the preferred site for the proposed public safety complex. And it was going to cost at least, I think, $1 million because of the amount of ledge, just to actually be able to build the public safety complex there. So anyway, that's a reality. There's a lot of ledge there, yeah. It's still on the list, though.
And when we first looked at it, we were really excited about the opportunity. It sounds like you think that it might be a good idea. So we went in thinking, what a great site, but lots of challenges.
Hi, I'm Todd Barron, 100 Gun Road. I have a question. I want to go back to the beginning, and that is, you have a deadline to submit a survey or a study or a plan, if you could define what that means, and tell us what happens if you don't make that date. And then the second question I have is, let's say you do make that date, right? And then we go through all of the meetings and we come up with an acceptable plan, and we try to raise the funds, and that's an issue, and we're not able to perform on the plan that was submitted, yet the Senior Citizens Center or the town has received the $2.5 million or whatever portion is left after taxes, et cetera. What happens with that money? Do we have to return it? What happens to it?
I'm going to answer the first question is, which it will be done. I mean, we've done most of the work. We can focus in. There's no chance that there won't be a real plan in place. But you're asking a really good question. Are there uncertainties associated with that? And we've been doing a lot of discussion about this. It may be that, let's say, 89 Clark and 0 College both seem like really good options. We believe that meets the requirements of the bequest. We don't want to rush a decision. It would be nice to have a final decision. And does somebody want to speak? I mean, some of these are legal issues more than architectural.
Yeah, I can't speak for the attorney, but in meetings with the attorney, the goal of the plan, it doesn't require, a survey. We don't really have to have all the septic work done before we narrow it down. We have some good information, but we'd have to go dig deeper. But digging deeper takes money, and until we have the 2.5 million, so we need need to meet the needs of the plan receive the funds. And then we have money to kind of dive in deeper to the final properties. Was there another question that I missed in there, Todd, I think?
So if the, and I don't mean to belabor this, but if the plan is accepted by the donor or the estate attorney, you get the money, are you bound by the plan you submit? Because it sounds that this is still formative, right? You're presenting a general concept which may be sufficient to get the funds. I'm just concerned about the extent to which the town would be bound to perform on a plan that may change.
I think it's realistic that a plan may change, and I don't think they expect, but I think they want us to have a good faith, detailed research to get the funding that he has presented to us. And, you know, it could be that the 2 properties we narrow it down to get sold. And now, you know, because we don't have money to buy the properties until we get the money. So it could be sold. So we would kind of have to go back and explore the other options that are available. But, you know, we're meeting the requirements of the plan as it's written in the will.
Okay.
Does that answer things?
Yeah. Thank you.
So in some ways, there's a plan A, there's a plan B, there's a plan C. And if for some reason plan A doesn't work, with our report, the town will have options in place. And I think there's the belief that those meet the requirements.
Tammy Walunas, College Highway. To answer Todd's question and anybody else that had that same question of if the May 17th date was not met, that 2.5 million would have been divided up among 4 other places in town: the Historical Society, the church, the senior center, and the Shriners, because those were things that were important to Red, who is donating this money. So please know that if this didn't go through, which answers Todd's question, that's where it would go.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Rooks, 189 College Highway. I'm here as a member of the grant committee, really excited to work on this project, hopefully. I also just want to acknowledge the challenge of engaging the younger generations in supporting this project. Just looking at the crowd, I worked at a senior center that we had about 100 people who attended each day. Want to acknowledge the value of investing in this type of senior center in order to promote the quality of life, but also the fitness of the community. Seniors who attend exercise programs and engage with other people are healthier and happier. And I'm interested in ways that we as the younger generation can support this initiative, because Southampton has a predominantly aging population, getting older. We're all getting older, we're all living longer. So the value and importance of the ability to socialize and to exercise. I mean, I've seen hundreds of people's lives literally be transformed from the ability to attend a day center. And I'm happy to speak to this more and try to connect with people that are in our town. Buy-in is so critical for this type of project. I also hear that it's not going to be something that's going to be solved overnight, and it's going to require a lot of planning. But I think the more that we can socially engage with the different people in the town, continue to solicit buy-in from people, the more likely that the project is to be really successful. Also, just want to acknowledge the robust programming that can be brought to the community when there's the correct venue, right? You're limited by your environment, and I know that the senior center really doesn't have exactly the environment to be able to bring in robust services. And so I see the opportunity to be able to expand access for different things for town. And so maybe this is a little bit of a rhetorical question or something that we can think about in the future. But I think it is going to take a lot of time and a lot of buy-in. And so I think that the importance of regularly sharing information, soliciting buy-in from people that are going to be attending the senior center, and really leveraging the community to bring all of these wonderful services that are available in our local area, because I think the more excitement that it generates and the more opportunities that we are able to see through this project will really show its true value. And I'm hoping to maybe get a little bit more involvement from the next generation that will be using the senior center, because I recognize that this is a huge investment. I understand the financial challenges of our town and limitations of our town's budget because of our small population, our small population size. But I do think if you build it, they will come. And if you build it, it will really make a big difference in the lives of the people that attend this day center. Like I said, I managed a clinic that was tied to a day center, and it was literally transformative. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Bob Koza, 181 College Highway. I'd like to pursue a little further a question that was started here. Assuming, in order to receive this $2.5 million, the town has to complete a study by May 17th, and then we get $2.5 million. Let's say a year from now, it becomes obvious that we cannot come up with the rest of the money that's going to be needed to build this new center. What happens to that $2.5 million? Does it go back to the 4 people that Mr. Parsons wanted it to go to, or does it just sit there unspent?
Ed Gibson, Town Administrator. Good question, Bob. And I'm going to deal with it on a theoretical basis because it's the only way I can. According to the will, the senior center was Mr. Parsons' first priority and first choice. The others are contingency. I'm going to say this. Town moves forward. There's nothing that I have seen that says we're not going to have a completed feasibility study from May 17th. I envision that as coming back with, here's a preferred parcel, here's a secondary parcel. I think that and why, and I think that completes the town's, through the senior center's, compliance with the will. Now, that being said, if that's true, we would be received somewhere between $2 and $2.5 million. At that point, once it's received, and I would probably say even before that point, we can start talking to property owners on what the costs of 3 to 4 acres might be. Are they compatible? And once we receive the money, we can do further studies as far as the soil on septics to see, okay, so far they both look good as far as a commercial kitchen. One's a little better than the other two, but not a whole heck of a lot. Once we know what the possible acquisition costs are they similar? Once we know the soil conditions for doing a septic system the size we need, are those two costs similar? So do you stay with parcel 1, the preferred one, or has something shifted that you go to parcel 2? I'm going to say that in the best interest of the town, whether it's in 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years, the town takes that funding, purchases whichever is the best of those two properties, and secures that in the future for the building of a senior center whenever they can raise the amount. Because whether it's a year from now, or 5 years, or 10 years from now, we all know by the size of that senior center, one's going to be needed for Southampton. So that would be my advice and how I'm looking at this.
Jim Sini, High Street. I have, I guess can be best described as an observation or an opinion and then a question. So my observation of the 4 properties, it seems really 3 properties. For me, the Clark Street properties are far superior than the Zero College Highway for the reason of just what this young lady was talking about, engagement. So if the senior center is on Clark Street and I go and I do a yoga class in the afternoon, let's say, and then I socialize with some friends and I hang out and I'm going to leave and I notice that there's a ball game going on over at Conant Park. I love ball games. So I walk to the ball game because it's right across the street. And I enjoy the game and I'm watching the game and I notice there's some grandparents of one of the players and I think I know them and I start talking to them. And they say, "Where'd you come from?" "I came from the senior center." And they asked me about the senior center. So I'm engaging with the community now and the community is engaging with me. The library is a short walk if I want to walk. The ball fields are there for people to enjoy watching games. It's much more centrally located in town. Zero College Highway is way on the end of one part of town. So from my observation, one of the main purposes of a senior center is not just to serve seniors, but to engage seniors with the town and the town with seniors. The centrally located Clark Street properties, in my mind, are far superior. So that's my observation. My question is, there's been some talk about how we're going to heat and cool the building using solar and et cetera. I'm just wondering if architecturally, if you've considered, the potential for passive solar heat. So if you have a bank of windows, rather than having the property face the way most properties face the street, parallel or whatever, to maybe turn the building a little bit. So you take advantage of a lot of passive solar heating. Is that something under consideration?
And absolutely. And in siting a building, there are a whole series of different factors. Which way you face, do you face the street or the green space, orienting the roof for active solar PV panels, passive solar, absolutely. South-facing windows with a deep overhang in the winter. The warm sun comes in when you want it. The hot summer sun is shading. That's built into the way, we design buildings, and I would like to think most firms take that into account. That's an important consideration. There's nothing like the middle of winter, the snow on the ground, and you sit in that sunshine. So that's a great thing. And it's a good reminder not only to us, but to everybody how important those kinds of factors are.
Thanks.
Diana Fetterman, Birchwood Drive. I would like to point out that the Clark Street parcels abut or are very close to the Manhan Meadow Sanctuary. We talked about outdoor trails and we talked about grants, and we've put over $100,000 in grants into restoring Manhan Meadows and making it accessible with non-slippery boardwalks and all kinds of trails and a bridge. The CPC, the Community Preservation, has also contributed significantly to that. So it's just something to keep in mind that, we could even make a trailhead from the senior center into the sanctuary and I don't think Jim mentioned the proximity to the pickleball courts either in Conant Park. Okay.
And this is another good point. This is the kind of thing we should get in the report. And I don't know if we have enough information about it, whether we've noted that anywhere, but it's exactly the kind of thing we want to note. It's easy to forget about, so thank you for the reminder.
put the fact that, and I would like to thank everybody that comes up with these great additional thoughts, because yes, this is stage one, but all of those are wonderful ideas with the Manhattan Sanctuary, interacting with the kids playing ball. I mean, those are all, you know, we get kind of focused here. So that's why we have this, because you guys see a broader picture. So thank you.
Other questions, other answers, things we should think about, things we shouldn't do, hopes, dreams, desires? I mean, we've heard a bunch. This is all really great stuff. Anything else we should take into consideration? You're an easy crowd. Anything COA wants to note, the committee wants to note?
Good evening, Joan Linehan, Council on Aging Director. I've had the honor of being in this town for 5.5 years. Wonderful people. You probably have seen things in the paper recently about my retirement. It's not because you're building a new senior center, because I really want to come back for that ribbon cutting. 20 years ago, I was in Agawam when they built their center, and it will happen. As Ed said, it could take 5 years. It could take 10 years. It's a journey. It's a process. You have to, you know, get the plan. We were fortunate to have Red Parsons think of us. I don't know why he thought of us. Somebody said maybe his mom. I'm not sure. But we're very grateful that he gave us this opportunity to make a plan, because as we know, and it was said before, that 2,000 square feet for 2,000 seniors in town is woefully inadequate, and we deserve much better. But it'll take time. This is the first process. I've been proud to work with this committee, very hardworking committee. The word due diligence has come up every time we meet, because they really want to make sure that we're making a plan that's going to work for the future, that's going to be affordable. And I think the grant piece, I was reading about the Raymond Jordan Center in Springfield. They built the last 4 years a 23,000 square foot building in Blunt Park, and they got $7 million from the disaster plan because of the tornado that went through Springfield, and that's how they helped to build their senior center. Not that I want a tornado to come through Southampton so that you could have money to build a center, but I'm just saying we're not sure where that money will come from. But we didn't know that $2.5 million would come our way, so I think it will happen. It'll take time. It's part of the journey. We're fortunate to have Dave and Devlin and their crew for making such a beautiful plan, but it could change, and we don't know. You know, it's just, this is the beginning, then there'll be the capital campaign, and then there'll be the building project. So maybe the land will change, but the plan is to get that money and to get it started. And so I'm very happy that I was here for a part of this journey, and thank you for coming out tonight. I appreciate all of you being here.
And I wanted to thank you so much for your comment. We live in a society that's divided in so many ways and pits all kinds of people against all kinds of other people. A blink of an eye and you'll be old enough. Take my word for the senior center. So we got to look out for each other, and you're doing that. You're looking out for everybody. A building 50 years, you know, it'll be there for you and your children and your grandchildren. So that is the hope. So is there maybe, this is so appreciated, and any other final comments?
I would just like to comment that before this committee even began, we visited, as a COA board, many, or not many, but a good number of senior centers, similar in size, that recently were built in the last few years that had a lot of the challenges that Tammy referred to, and we will work very closely with them to make sure we totally understand the big picture, because yes, there are additional costs that will come up, and we hope that we can raise enough money to cover that for a few years. But again, it's something that we truly desperately need to support all the things Kate so elegantly mentioned. So thank you again for that. And thank you everyone for speaking up. You have to come to the microphone if you want to speak, though. I'm sorry. Only because there's people at home listening and they don't want to miss your thought. Every thought is important.
Hello, I'm Susan, and there are a lot of seniors over here, and some people are on their way to be seniors. I think it's very important for all the interaction, because otherwise you got too many people that are isolated, and you're just sitting home and like watching Bonanza. You know what I mean? What are you supposed to do, no matter what age? Health issues, I mean, you can't help, you do the best you could. But it's so important to have a place to go where you could play pitch, you could play bingo, you could do line dancing, other games. You need to talk to people and spread what you do know to the younger generations too, because we're all going to get there eventually. And people don't realize, you turn around and already you go, well, what happened to my life? Wasn't I just 20? You know what I mean? Today you're 20, the next day you're 50, and before you know it, you're 75. Then where did life go? You just don't want to stay home and just watch whatever. It could be anything, because interaction keeps you young and vital. And without that, it's like you're sitting in a rocking chair waiting to just die. And nobody wants that.
Thank you. Well put. Class dismissed.
Thank you.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.